Hi everybody, I'm baking at church and I wanted to show you how it works in case you've ever wondered how sourdough works. Unfortunately, I already discarded some of my starter. I forgot to show you that step, but I can show you everything after discarding the used starter. So like I said, I already threw out most of the starter in my bucket. If you're baking at home, you probably won't be using as big of a bucket as this. This is the one that I use for farmers markets when I'm baking 20-30 loaves at a time. You can use a mason jar, that will work just fine. So now with an empty bucket, I'm going to zero out my scale, and I like to give it a nice healthy dose. The key when you're feeding your starter is you want about equal parts flour and hot water. I like doing a mixture of whole wheat and bread flour, which is a high protein kind of unbleached white flour. And I like doing about a ratio of 1 to 2 whole wheat flour to bread flour. So I'm going to add, I'm just going to call it 80 grams. Oop, yep, 81. And then, like I said, you want to, or I like a 1 to 2 whole wheat to bread flour ratio. That means I'm going to add 160, and our total is going to be, what is that, 240. So watch carefully, add it till we get 240. 242, close enough. No need to fret if you're a couple grams over or under. The next step is we're going to add our water, and then we're going to mix it by hand. Mixing it by hand lets the bacteria in the sourdough starter just get a good taste of whatever's on your hand. Make sure you wash your hands before you do this. Coronavirus, don't spread it. But seriously, you can look up cool stories about bakers and their hands and the symbiotic relationship that sourdough starters create with bakers' hands. So that's how I like to do it. Let's take a look at how it works. Okay, so here in the church kitchen, this nice sink, gonna add some water, and the temperature of the water, I'm not a real stickler about it. The most important thing is consistency. So once you choose a temperature that your starter seems to like and that works for your bread, just go with that. I prefer pretty hot, so I'm gonna kind of preheat the water a little bit until it is nice and warm. These church sinks always take a while to heat up. And I'm gonna zero out. So remember we had 240 grams. And I'm gonna add some water and add it right up to 240. $246. And to be honest, I like my starter a little bit on the watery side, just a little bit more liquidy. Makes it easier to mix. So 255, 254 grams of water over 240 grams of flour. I like that quite a bit. So the final step is mixing the flour and the water, and kind of get my hand a little wet. The wetter your hands are, the less stuff sticks to them. So just mix it all up with your fingers, get way in there. And the goal is you want there to be no dry flour left. You want it to all be the same consistency. Just go in there. If you're using a mason jar and it's a small one, it can be hard to reach in. So you can use a spoon, although you do lose a little bit of that cool symbiotic factor. Alright, now I've got a lot of starter on my hands. other hand wet so it doesn't stick to that. I'm just gonna kind of squeegee the flour off my fingers right into the bucket. All of that is good stuff. Just get off as much as you can. Doesn't need to be perfect. We're gonna rinse the rest. And that is a healthy starter. Final step is putting the lid back on. And you don't want your starter to dry out. The lid kind of makes it a nice climate-controlled environment for it to ferment. There you go. Now we can put that on the shelf.